gotta be honest, I can't stay here now.
He thought it was a bear, but then he said the more he watched it, it wasn't a bear. He said it looked like a naked human being. And he said this thing was crawling on all fours, and it crawled directly to where the tree he was just sitting at.
Allah! Astaghfirullah! What do you want from me? Why you keep following me?
The woods tend to be home to so many creepy things, ranging from ghosts to cryptids, clowns, and more. I've got something for your nightmares. Now, for those of you who have watched me before, you know I love a good ghost story, so let's kick off today with one. Ghostly figures like to appear in Yellowstone National Park when the temperature gets really cold. I'm talking like a -30 if you're talking Celsius. So our first possible ghostie is one Maddie Culver, a sweet lady who passed while trying to give birth back in 1889 at the now gone Firehole Hotel, once located several miles north of the Old Faithful Inn, and she nervously flutters about, heartbroken over not getting to see her spawn grow up. When Mrs. Culver passed away, the hotel's grounds were too frozen to dig a grave, so her body was placed in 2 pickle barrels and buried in a snowdrift until spring thaw. According to a Lee Whittlesley, a park historian, the grave is later fenced in and maintained by the wife of a park concessionaire, and Maddie's daughter was sent to live with relatives. There's another ghostie, one L.R. Piper, a cashier from the First National Bank of St. Mary's, Ohio, who on July 30th of 1890 stepped out of the now gone Fountain Hotel to enjoy an after-dinner cigar and vanished. U.S. Army troops that were stationed in the area at the time searched for a month for Piper, and his brother-in-law spent all of September that year looking for him. At one point he slept under the stars, hoping that coyote howls would lead him to Piper's remains. It's believed that Piper walked out into the night and inadvertently stumbled into one of the many hot springs located nearby. So there's 2 hot springs there, Gentian Pool and Deep Blue Geyser. They're very large, very deep, and it's believed a search of them would yield petrified bones. Alright everybody, next up is a video that's kinda close to home for me, a spotting of Bigfoot from Northern Ontario here in Canada. Now it isn't specified where, but if I'm looking at the terrain, I'd be willing to bet on northeastern Ontario. It shows what clearly appears to be a Sasquatch walking in a wooded area near a body of water. So this video was shared by the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization, and it was stated along with the video that these boaters in Northern Ontario had recently captured the incident. No specific time and location of the sighting was provided, but you know my guess. The boaters were recording the nearby shoreline when this large bipedal figure with reddish brown hair stepped out from the woods and walks clear across the open shoreline, providing a very obvious, albeit brief, view to the onlookers. Then it quickly disappears into the trees. The fluid movement. You really gotta make a note of the fluid movement, also the deftness of this creature in navigating the rocky and steep terrain with ease. So because of the dexterity demonstrated in the video recording, I don't think it was somebody in a mascot suit. Trust me, I've warned them, it's hard to be that fluid in them. Look folks, cryptids like their isolated areas, so I think there's a whole slew of them enjoying the deep woods up there and the slightly cooler climate, and I say we let them exist in peace. More than a few visitors to Witchwood Forest, which is a former royal hunting ground, have reported feeling invisible hands touching their shoulders or hearing the thunder of invisible horses. Yep, we've got footage folks. I know. You're welcome. So this comes from the popular YouTube channel 333 Ghost Hunting, which very clever. And if you look at the video, it's enough to make your spine tingle at the slightest rustle in the leaves. Who do I think it is? Well, I think it's one Amy Robsart, the wife of the Earl of Leicester, who mysteriously passed away of a broken neck. So when the Earl was hunting in the woods, his late wife's ghost confronted him and predicted that he would join her in 10 days, which he did. So apparently if you run into the ghost, same thing's gonna happen to you. So maybe just walk around like this. So anybody want to guess what the Pine Barrens in New Jersey is home to? Think Jersey, folks. The devil himself. The forest floor of New Jersey's extensive pine barrens are sandy, acidic, and nutrient poor, but they are filled with plant life, including pine trees that thrive on forest fires in order to thrive. So to understand the legend of the Jersey Devil, you gotta understand the birthplace. It is a remote region extending 1,700 square miles across southeastern New Jersey, and it's a giant aquifer with dense strands of white cedar. Inside, the air is calm, still, and cool. The shadows heavy. The cedar stands throughout the swamp stains, and the streams are red with tannin. One area of stunted trees is called the Pygmy Forest. And while a lot of folks consider it a barren wilderness, 27 varieties of orchids grow there. In the 18th century, the area came to be populated with outcasts of one kind or another, and over time, its residents seem to almost cultivate a hillbilly-like backwardness that some believe is intended to keep outsiders outside. And that, my friends, is how it became the home of one of the most famous cryptids of all time, a monster with a goat's head, bat's wings, and cloven hooves. So we do have an audio from Howie, YouTube user, and I don't know how to describe it. Seriously, listen for yourself.
Oh my God.
It gave me chills. Like, you can't see it, but there's goosebumps. Part man, part cryptid, all spooky, Le Loyon is a very mysterious figure that spent years hunting the forests of Mals in Switzerland. Clad in a cloak, a boiler suit, and a gas mask, the figure never attacked or antagonized anyone who crossed paths with them, but their creepy appearance and silent demeanor left many unsettled. And it left locals terrified at the prospect of going into the woods. The identity of the ghostly figure remains unknown, but for whatever reason, they've chosen to live in isolation, in the woods, and yeah, you can have that woods. All yours. In 2018, a strange video was released showing what appeared to be some type of creature stalking a moose in Canada. Now, the person who captured it couldn't even explain what she had witnessed. While it remains unknown what she actually saw, a lot of folks drew comparisons to Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. Luckily, the mysterious figure was just staring. It didn't harm the moose during the video. We wouldn't be showing that. And although it was facing in the opposite direction, you gotta wonder how freaked out the moose was if it saw what was lurking behind, because moose are pretty powerful creatures, folks. There is a whole lot going on in the ground under our feet, from microorganisms and plants to whole critters like groundhogs and moles. But it's easy to forget how much activity is happening under our feet until you run across something like this video. Filmed in the forests of Sacré-Cœur in Quebec, this video shows a patch of earth pulsating and breathing like a living organism. Some folks were like, is it an earthquake? Is it the rising of an eldritch god? Is it a bunch of moles having a rager? Not quite. It's caused by winds blowing the nearby trees, and then the root systems are being lifted up in loose earth to displace the ground, which, sure, happy that it's explainable, but like, looking at it? The life of Maria Holmes was not a happy one. After emigrating from England, she arrived in Santa Cruz in 1897 and began working at a popular place for people to work. Withdrawn and melancholy, she lamented the state of her life to other workers, and she even said, like, that's not my own name, and she eventually sadly took her own life and was interred beneath a headstone paid for by friends at her workplace. But then it went missing, only found many years 12 miles away in the woods of Davenport, which, like, how did it get there? Why there? I have questions. If you have answers, let me know. A lot of people don't like clowns at the best of times, but even folks who don't suffer from coulrophobia, yep, there's an actual name for it, would probably get creeped out if they ran into a clown in the middle of the woods. Well, around 2016, I think we all remember there was this crazy rash of mysterious clown sightings in rural areas all over the world. Some folks were like, oh, it's a publicity stunt. New It movie. Yeah, it had nothing to do with that. There was apparently in South Carolina a clown group who was luring people into the woods. Look, whether this was a conspiracy or just plain old mass panic, it made a lot of people not like clowns for a while. Or forests. Or clowns in forests. So Mo Luttrell was a ranger in the USFS for almost 15 years, and this is quite the story. So one day his station was getting a lot of calls about this lone wolf with a collar on that was hanging around campsites, which he was like, that's weird. This is not an area for wolves. But hey, anything's possible. Thankfully, no calls had mentioned any kind of violent behavior, so he was like, let's go investigate. It was around noon when he left the station to go check out where the places the wolf had been sighted, wandered around for about a couple of hours, then took a break for water, and when he was getting ready to go again, the thing appeared 20 feet away, trotting near the tree line. Seemed friendly, it had the collar, so Mo whistled to it, it bounded over to him, and then once he got closer, he was like, oh, it's just a big dog, it's not a wolf. So Mo radioed in and was like, hey, I've got the dog with me. But just as he said it, the dog took off. He chased the dog through the forest for at least 5 minutes before it slowed down near a rock bed / creek area and started pacing around a spot. Mo got closer and noticed the overgrowth had almost disguised what appeared to be bones. He called it in immediately, another team was sent to recover the remains, and when he went to retrieve the dog, it was just gone. Now, the bones were identified as somebody who had sadly passed away from a self-inflicted wound to the head, and this guy had been reported missing in the area quite a few years prior. There had been no hope of finding him. So when Mo spoke to the mom on the phone, she was like, how did you find him? And he mentioned the black dog, and the mom went silent. Apparently, the guy who had passed away, he had struggled with making connections with humans, and he had sunk into a deep depression after the passing of the very dog that had led Mo to him. Number 5, lipstick warning. Now, Stella McDonald and her now ex-husband used to love exploring abandoned structures when they were together. I remembered one that they described as a shack that was about a mile away from their home. To set the scene, the grass and trees were so grown over and tall that it was hard even getting to said house. Her ex managed to get a window open though, and that's how they got in, because the doors were completely awful. Mildew, you name it. Ugh. I think this is where I interject a warning to not do this yourself. Don't do this at home. And if you ever feel the need to urban explore, for the love of everything, please do it safely. So Stella described what they found as a time capsule with piles of expensive furniture and stuff covered with really dusty sheets. Apparently though, everything looked really high quality and expensive. Like even the wallpaper was nice. It was creepy how it seemed like the former residents just walked away from all of it in the 1950s or 60s, and how awful the exterior seemed in comparison. Once again, she called it a shack, not me. So the kitchen was upstairs, which was pretty odd, but the duo ventured up there, and then there's this huge arch opening into like a gentleman's type man cave. Stella made a note that once again, there was a plethora of expensive furniture and who knows what else. So she stood in the archway while her ex rummaged through all of the unknown clutter. Now off to the side of the arch was a huge mirror leaning against the wall. So she used it. She wanted to like check her hair, make sure there's no spider webs in it. Honestly, just the thought of that makes me want to take a shower. No, thank you. Stella took maybe 3 steps away from the mirror to tell her ex that she wanted to leave because it felt like there was a presence right beside her. And when she returned in front of the mirror, she saw that the words "Get out" were suddenly scrawled out in bright pink lipstick that very much hadn't been there before. Now she's sworn on everything that it hadn't been there. She would have noticed it, and also would have noticed if there was another presence in the room with her and her husband. So this shock caused Stella to scream, leap back into a kitchen table, and then obviously, crash, kaboom, fall. So her ex came running over, because, this got his attention, but Stella was too scared to form words by this point. So she just continued to point at the mirror and babble until the duo safely got away. Yeah, hard pass. Also, congrats on him being your ex. Sound like he cared for you in this moment though. Number 4, death becomes you. So yeah, there was this once beautiful Greek revival home in Uniontown, Alabama, but now apparently it looks like it's being swallowed up by the earth, and its tragic past certainly lives up to the haunting aesthetic. Look folks, the term shack is subjective, and I'm about to stretch that meaning beyond its limit today. So in January of 1994, the remains of, let's see if I can get this right, bleep-year-old Alan Lucy were found buried beneath the front porch of the Hardy Coleman house, or as it's better known, online, the Lucy Murder house. So Alan, who lived in the home with his adoptive parents, Philip and Margaret Lucy, disappeared without a trace in May of 1985. In the months that followed, Jason Lucy, their biological son, told classmates that his father killed Alan and buried him in the backyard. For years, nobody believed Jason's story, even though rumors about the Lucy family swirled around town long before Alan disappeared. Decades after, Alan Lucy's killer was brought to justice, the house has still not recovered, largely due to environmental injustices that have driven many residents out of Uniontown and left those who remain fighting for justice of their own. So what's left? Oh, nothing crazy, just a house in the middle of a forest. Haunted beyond belief. Lots of bad mojo there. Number 3, a hiking adventure gone wrong. So this tale comes along courtesy of Grant Charbonneau, who along with his buddy Mike embarked on a hiking adventure on the day after he turned 18. So armed with a compass to navigate the labyrinth of trails, the duo set out to conquer the longest route leading to a camping spot deep within the forest. The color-coded paths ensured they stayed on course, but fate had other plans for the friends. As they ventured along the red route adorned with a tent emblem, a dilapidated sign hinted at an old dirt road, tempting them to deviate from their original plan. Intrigued by the mystery it promised, they forged ahead, discovering an abandoned place concealed by nature's, reclaiming of it. A desolate structure covered in graffiti and bearing ominous signs of warning. Let's just see, what did it have? Oh right, the classic, keep out, private property, and trespassers will be, kaboomed, for lack of a better word. Undeterred by the foreboding messages, the boys breached the door's defenses, revealing a time-forgotten interior frozen in the mid-1980s. Dust-covered relics, wild boar, and stag heads adorning the walls painted a picture of abandonment and eerie stillness. Now their curiosity pushed them further. Mike ascended upstairs while Grant explored the kitchen. The disconcerting ambiance heightened as they stumbled upon a locked door beneath the stairs. Now, this is where I personally would be running for the hills, because if something is locked, it should probably stay that way, but I'm sure you and I can both guess how this story is about to go. Otherwise, I wouldn't be mentioning it. Determined, the boys broke the chains and uncovered a hidden staircase leading to a basement. And not just any basement, one harboring a bizarre secret. So their flashlights illuminated a room filled with glass cases, each veiled in layers of dust. As they wiped away the grime, they were met with grotesque wax-like figures clad in various dresses. Now finally, we've got a chill running down their spines, but oh, just wait till we get to the center case. There, suspended in eternal bondage, was a clothed human figure, a haunting display of the macabre. A yellow-stained envelope nearby contained a handwritten note, revealing the twisted mind behind this morbid collection. The author, a self-proclaimed collector, detailed a dark journey from taxidermist to a connoisseur of preserved human beauty. His words, not mine. Each victim, immortalized in wax, became a macabre masterpiece in this gruesome gallery. Overwhelmed by revulsion, the boys finally made their escape, leaving the forest and its secrets behind. The note, a testament to the deranged mind that lurked in the shadows, became their only link to a truth that the authorities struggled to unravel. Now, as the guys sat in the safety of Grant's car, the weight of what they witnessed began to sink in. So this forest, once a realm of adventure, kinda now bore the stain of unspeakable horrors. And the abandoned house stood as a silent witness to the awfulness within. Sorry, I was losing my words there because, how on earth do you describe that? The echoes of that day linger in the, depths of their memories. A chilling reminder that, maybe don't adventure where you're not supposed to go. Seriously, folks, beware. Number 2, captive room. Did you seriously think I was going to do a whole list on abandoned places that would terrify authorities without having a single story from actual authorities? Come on, folks. Who do you take me for? I like my credible sources, and this one had just just happens to hit a little close to home. Oh, how close, you ask? Well, as an Ontario resident, a story that took place in Pickering seems pretty close enough. So back in 2011, on, December 19th to be exact, Durham police reported that they'd found what appeared to be a confinement room in an old abandoned farmhouse east of Toronto. Police said the room in the Northwest Pickering home was recently built and looked like it was solely designed to hold someone captive. Now, investigators at the time were trying to figure out if the room was used to actually confine somebody or if it was just designed for another purpose and they were, over-exaggerating. So they mentioned one possibility is that it might have been built as a prop for an amateur filmmaker. So this room was stumbled upon by contractors surveying the property because, it was slated for demolition more than 2 weeks prior to the report. At the time, Durham police spokesman Dave Selby said that the home had been abandoned for so long that the focus wasn't on the original owners, but on anyone who may have been seen driving in the area or any other suspicious activity. They're obviously down there because it's somewhere where no one would check. You could stick someone in this room and lock them in. Now, police didn't rule anything out, but they weren't able to determine at the time if anybody was ever held in the room. Once again, we've got our cop spokesman. Our forensic guys went down and took all kinds of samples of anything they could, find to figure out if it was used and how it was used. But at this point, it's still under investigation and we really don't know if it was used for a criminal purpose or not. So 2 weeks after the room was discovered, the farmhouse burned down in what police described as a suspicious fire. Now, they've never laid charges in connection to the fire, but, Robert White was eventually charged, arrested, and pleaded guilty to breaking and entering with intent. He planned on kidnapping a woman named Gwen Armstrong, a friend of his ex-wives, because she provided his ex-wife with emotional and financial support after their separation. Yikes! Number 1, somebody found a body. A group of young adults in South Carolina back in 2021 got quite the scare when they were exploring an allegedly haunted house and wound up discovering a dead body in a freezer. According to a local media report, the strange incident occurred in the town of Norway as 8 youngsters were riding ATVs in a remote part of the community. So at some point in the midst of their adventure, they came upon an abandoned shack, which is rumored to be, haunted. And as adventurous folks are, likely to do, they were like, hey, let's go see if there's any ghosts inside. However, as they were looking around the vacant residence, one of the members of the group stumbled upon a sizable freezer and decided, let's see what's inside. Upon opening the cold storage unit, he was greeted by an ungodly smell, which he initially thought was just, rotting meat. Technically he was right, although the contents of the freezer were far more gruesome than, some old pork chops. That's because on closer examination, he realized that the meat was wearing jeans and socks. So the would-be ghost hunters called the cops, who arrived on the scene to collect the body for an autopsy to figure out the identity of the deceased. It is believed that the body inside the freezer had been there for months and could possibly be the victim of foul play. As for the adventurous youngins, it would seem that they are now haunted by something far more unsettling than a ghost, the stench from the rotting corpse. One of them said, I heard that once you smell a human, you can't ever forget it. And he's like, yeah, I can still smell it right now.
Number 5 in this list is the pit. So this one is less scary and more just gross, if I'm being honest with you. Frivolous on Reddit says, when I was in the Scouts, or rather the local equivalent, legally adult Scouts had to do the 3-feather challenge. 1 day without food, 1 day without speaking, and 1 day and night alone in the woods with only a knife and a tarp unseen by any human, after which one has to sneak back to the scout camp unnoticed by the sentries and report to the camp master. It was my 3rd day, so I took off, walked for miles through the woods, and found the most remote spot in the wildest, most overgrown part of the woods. Spent a spooky but uneventful night until almost before dawn, when I decided to go for a morning swim in the lake right before taking off to go back. I stripped nude and went towards the lake, but noticed a group of guys fishing, so decided to go back. Suddenly, the ground underneath my feet caved in and I found myself submerged up to my armpits in the absolute vilest mass I have ever smelled. It was a pit where poachers dumped the guts and leftovers of illegally hunted deer, and it fermented for weeks. Imagine the scene. A group of anglers hear some ungodly screaming from the direction of the woods and run there to see if someone needs help. What they see is a teenager-shaped ghoul covered completely in blood and rotten offal, who's crawling out of a bloody hole in the ground while shrieking and weeping, then runs at them. I can't imagine how gross it would have been to fall into a pit of dead, rotting animal guts as you're completely naked. That alone would have scarred me for life. And then on the other side of things, to be the anglers and see this golem-like creature covered in guts running at you. I would have thought that whatever this thing is just took down a massive animal or something, and that I'm about to be next on the menu. One would also think that if you're about to do some illegal poaching, that maybe hiding it in a spot where people don't walk would be a good idea. idea. Like, I obviously don't know anything about that world of things at all, but this whole scenario just seems pretty dumb to me, guys. Either way, at least my dude made it out okay, although he had to be covered in guts first. Number 4 on this list is the swinging bag. This story is one that defies all of our understanding of physics. Ranker writes, "My scout troop was on a 10-day backpacking trek at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico. We were hiking in the southern region and must have been on night 4 or 5. We got to the campsite after a surprise thunderstorm that dumped some hail on us. We set up camp and built a fire to dry out our clothes. While sitting around the campfire, someone noticed that a 10-stake bag was hanging on a nearby branch of a tree about 5 feet off the ground. It was swinging back and forth, hard enough that the branch was moving, though no wind was blowing. We stopped it from swinging and watched to see if it would start up again, and it did. It took a few minutes to get going again, but it was swinging on its own in the same direction. We all went to sleep for the night, only to find it in the morning still swinging. We have no idea what would have caused this." Yeah, and what would have caused that? I think our guys would have noticed if the wind was really acting up, or if it had anything to do with that. This sounds like something paranormal for sure. I'm honestly pretty surprised that these guys were left alone that night. Something like this is a telltale warning sign. A ghost or a demon basically telling you to get the hell out of there. The fact that they managed to live through that night and just had the bag sway was really weird. Either way, still a pretty chilling tale. Number 3 on this list is The Voice. This is a story of a forest ranger who was on a personal trip, and it's just all kinds of creepy. Ranker says, "I was on a big camping trip with my friends at Suwannee River Music Park in Florida. My sister and I decided to go off and explore some trails around 11 p.m. There was a trail connected to the one we were on, but there was yellow tape strung up between the 2 trees at the entrance. We decided to go in anyway. About 15 steps into the trail, we both hear clear as day, unmistakably, our mother's voice say, 'Honey, why is your nose bleeding?' Our mother was not on this trip with us. We turn around to see nothing. Being kind of spooked, we both started to head back to the main trail. A few minutes later, my sister had a nosebleed that lasted like 20 seconds. Now this one is just plain weird, guys. Who was that voice? Where was it coming from? Why did it sound like their mother, and how on earth did it know what was going to happen? So many questions and so little answers with a story like this. Maybe there was something special about this trail and that's why it was taped off. Did someone die here and the ghost was the one imitating their mother's voice? That still doesn't explain how that ghost would know how their mother sounds and also what's going to happen in the future. It seems like they stumbled upon an area of the forest where conventional laws of the world don't apply. Number 2 on this list is the Invisible Man. I guess invisible might not be the best word to describe this guy, because you could see him, he just wasn't actually there. Ranker says, "I worked at a summer camp where the cabins were arranged in a circle with a center building that was used for showers and bathrooms. One night, one of my campers, about 12 years old, asks to go to the bathroom just as we had all gone to bed. I tell him to take his bunkmate and go quickly. The bathroom building is about 100 feet away. The kids are kind of dorking around like kids do, and they take off to the bathroom running. All of a sudden, I hear screams that still haunt me. Hysterical, choking for air, horror movie screams. I jump up and run out, and I see the 2 boys sitting on the ground right outside the bathrooms, and they're kind of holding each other. After a few minutes, they calm down enough and say that they ran through a man. They say he appeared right before they got to the bathroom door and was standing in the doorway. They didn't have enough space to stop, and they put their hands up to go through him and into the door. They said there was cold air around him, and that was it. He was gone. They said he had a suit on and black slick back hair and was smiling. Literally 2 kids ran through a dude. This is the type of core memory that I do not want to have. The kids left the camp the next day and apparently were never the same after that. Clearly this man must have been a ghost that died here, but from what and who he was, we may never know. And finally, number 1 on this list is a jungle spirit. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. A literal spirit from the jungle. The story goes, I was working at a survey station deep in the Malaysian jungle in Borneo. I was sleeping in one of the dorms with some of the rangers we were working with, 5 people in the total dorm. That night, I was having a nightmare and woke up at about 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside. Whatever it was fairly big and sounded bipedal. It stopped right outside the window, so I'm staring back at the window trying hard to see. Suddenly, one of the rangers shifted in her bed, making a noise, and I could hear whatever it was running away quite fast. Being a rather skeptical person in general, I woke up and asked the rangers the next day about it. They adamantly believed that it was a jungle spirit coming to check us out. The station stood on stilts, so the window sits about 10 feet off the ground. I asked about the possibility of it being a wild animal, but they said that the only things big enough to make that loud of a footprint would have been sun bear or a cloud leopard. They said it's generally unheard of for those animals to make it that close to the survey station, since there are usually people milling about. The rangers have heard the footsteps before, and they firmly believe that a jungle spirit was roaming about the site. I'm getting serious predator vibes from this story, guys. Honestly, if I had this experience, then I am out of there. I don't need to be stalked and eaten by some ancient Malaysian jungle spirit. No thank you. Knowing that you can get attacked by real life animals is bad enough, let alone spirit ones. Number 5 on this list is the Michigan Dogman. The Michigan Dogman is a scary urban legend of a creature from, yeah, you guessed it, Michigan. It is a massive 7-foot tall beast that stands on 2 legs and looks a bit like a canine, however it's got the torso of a man. One thing that's very notable about this fearsome creature is its extremely loud human scream that it lets out before it's coming to strike. The first sighting of it was back in 1887, and since then there's been many more sightings, all in different regions of Michigan. What's interesting about this creature though is that you won't need to worry about running into it for at least a few more years. I can guarantee that you don't want to be walking around the forest and having this thing appear in front of you, but the good thing is that you don't need to worry about that until 2027. It's believed that this creature only appears in years that end with 7. During that year, it will be out and about in the forests of Michigan, hunting and preying on the victims that it finds. But whenever it isn't a year that ends in 7, it's in a deep slumber hidden somewhere in the state. If this thing was awake all the time, it very easily could be higher on this list because of how terrifying and deadly it can be. But because it's usually asleep, I'm not having it so high up. That being said though, still be careful if you're in a Michigan forest regardless of the year, because I can only imagine that accidentally waking this thing up would probably be very bad for everybody involved. Number 4 on this list is the Amazonian giant centipede. Centipedes are gross, guys. In fact, the only thing that might be grosser than a centipede is a millipede. The centipede that we're looking at today is a very real animal that isn't just gross, but it's flat out scary and dangerous. World Atlas says the Peruvian giant yellow-legged centipede, or the Amazonian giant centipede, is one of the largest centipede species in the world. The creature's about 30 centimeters long and preys on a large variety of animals. Interestingly, the centipede's diet is based not only on other invertebrates, but it can also overpower and kill creatures larger than it in size like lizards, snakes, frogs, mice, bats, and sparrow-sized birds. The centipede's primary weapons for killing prey are a pair of modified legs. The centipede uses these legs to penetrate the body of the victim and inject a highly toxic venom into their bloodstream. The killer creature can even climb the ceilings of caves where they can hold and manipulate their prey like bats with only a few legs attached to the ceiling. A 4-year-old human child was reported to have been killed by the centipede venoms before. So not only can this scary arthropod kill people with its venom, but it's super difficult to fight. That's because it's extremely fast, guys. Having 100 legs means that you can move pretty quickly, and this thing definitely does. It can move up to 3 feet per second, which is really fast considering its size. Also, the nature of its body means that it can crawl into super small crevices that you might not see. The child who died from its venom actually happened to run into this thing in an empty soda can. The kid picked up the can not realizing what was inside, and then the centipede struck. Running into this thing in the forest, or honestly anywhere, would be really horrible. If you see an Amazonian giant centipede, then just walk the other direction. Number 3 on this list is the Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, as described by All That's Interesting, are animalistic humanoid creatures chronicled in the centuries-old folklore of various Native American tribes of the United States Southwest, most notably the Navajo, Pueblo, Apache, and Hopis people. It is one of many shape-shifting monsters from Native American legends. Skinwalkers are typically described with a beastly and deformed body, a marred, albeit humanoid face, and blazing orange-red eyes. But the origins of these creatures vary among tribal cultures. Some traditions say skinwalkers are powerful medicine men who succumb to the temptation of using their abilities for evil. Other traditions claim that the skinwalkers are the punitive form of any man, woman, or child who commits a deep sin. In any case, the myth of the skinwalkers is well known among indigenous communities. These Native American monsters are described as incredibly powerful and nearly immortal. They can only be killed with a bullet or knife dipped in white ash, a bit reminiscent of a shapeshifter from popular culture, the werewolf, and its weakness to silver bullets. Shape-shifting animal, human beasts who are extremely difficult to kill and super athletic. These things are very dangerous and not a species that you want to mess with. Typically residing in the forested areas of northern United States and Canada, they often travel in groups, which just kind of adds to how absolutely dead you are if you do happen across some. Be very careful of the skinwalkers if you're trekking through some North American forests. Number 2 on this list is an electric eel. So you won't be finding an electric eel in any northern forests like Canada, where I live, which is honestly pretty good for me. But if you live in the Amazon and happen to be going through an Amazon forest, then it's very likely this creature will be in the rivers right next to you. Definitely do not go for a dip in those rivers though, because the electric eel might be waiting for you. World Atlas says a shocking danger lurks beneath the waters of Amazon River in Brazil. The electric eel is not a true eel, but actually a knife fish capable of delivering a massive electric shock to those who threaten it. 3 pairs of abdominal organs of the fish allow it to generate electricity enough to stun an adult human being. The eels use their electricity generating capacity to stun prey before consuming them. Fatal attacks on humans are rare, but not completely non-existent. A single jolt could stun a human being enough to cause the person to stop breathing and drown even in shallow water. Multiple shocks could definitely trigger respiratory failure in humans. In the past, there are cases where the fish have delivered shocks strong enough to kill horses and even stun an adult caiman. If this fish can literally kill a horse, then we don't stand a chance, folks. There also literally isn't anything you can do about this thing other than just get out of the water. Like, it might be able to shock you without even touching you, so you might not even know that you're in danger. These things are also super gross looking and just not appealing as an animal at all. Super cool that they have electrical abilities, but not super cool if they use those abilities on me or you. And number 1 on this list is the Cherokee Horned Serpent. This is another Native American legend similar to the Skinwalkers, but this one is arguably far more dangerous. Another name for the Cherokee Horned Serpent is Yuktana. The Yuktana was, as you might imagine, a legend that originated from the Cherokee tribe in western North Carolina. James Mooney, somebody who actually studied the Cherokee tribe, wrote about this beast in a book he published back in 1992. He wrote, "Those who know say that the Yuktana is a great snake as large around as a tree trunk with horns on its head and a bright blazing crest with a diamond upon its forehead and scales glittering like sparks of fire. The blazing diamond is called Yolonsoti, transparent, and he who can win it may become the greatest wonder worker of the tribe. Still, it is worth a man's life to attempt it, for whoever is seen by the Yuktana is so dazed by the bright light that he runs toward the snake instead of trying to escape. This diamond is so dazzling that it's going to draw you in, and it's very problematic. You are going to lose if you fight this creature. It is just so strong and so powerful that unless you're literally an Avenger, you're just simply not going to stand a chance. It's said that these beasts are born out of envy and jealousy and come from the underworld. Massive serpents with incredible powers that literally come from hell. These things might just be lurking around the forests near you, hugging onto a tree and waiting for somebody to come and try to take the diamond in their forehead. There are rumors that one warrior was actually able to defeat these beasts at some point, but that is honestly just a rumor and never been confirmed. Be very, very careful if you're walking around a North American forest by yourself, and if you see a diamond, just run. Number 5 on this list is the Wampus cat, a name that sounds kind of silly and cute, but really isn't reflective of how dangerous this creature can truly be. How Stuff Works says, it smells awful, like skunk spray and wet dog. It has glowing yellow eyes and fangs. It kills animals, kidnaps kids, and terrifies all it meets. Creepiest of all, it's half cat, half woman. This terrifying creature is the Wampus cat. Generally on the prowl in northeastern Tennessee, the creature has also been spotted in eastern Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, and intriguingly at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. The origin story of this kitty is still up in the air, but apparently there are 2 popular ones. One says a Cherokee wife hid beneath the skin of a mountain lion to spy on her husband and his buddies while they were hunting. They discovered her, and as punishment, the tribe's medicine men said she had to wear the lion skin forevermore, turning her into a catwoman. Anguished, she roams around bemoaning her fate. Another tale says a Cherokee warrior went on the hunt for a beast that was terrorizing his tribe. When he tracked it down, it looked him straight in the eye, causing the warrior to go insane. The warrior's wife wasn't happy about this, so she hid under the skin of a mountain lion and stalked the beast to exact revenge. When she found it, the beast took one look at her and fled, petrified. Cross your fingers that you don't ever run into this creature, because it may be the last thing that you ever do. Number 4 on this list is a poison dart frog. This animal is not something from legend. It's not a scary story that somebody told you by a campfire one evening that got exaggerated throughout the years. It is a very real, very dangerous animal that can be found in the Amazon rainforests. Poison dart frogs are incredibly poisonous. So poisonous, in fact, that it's believed the venom contained in one single tiny frog is enough to kill 10 adult human beings. It's really too bad that we can't get close to these creatures because they are truly stunning. Their bright colors are some of the most beautiful in the entire world, and the patterns on their back are marvelous to look at. In fact, these patterns resemble small darts, and this is one of the reasons why they got their name, poison dart frogs. The other reason why they got their name is because Native Americans used to take the poison from these animals and put it onto the tip of darts that they would then use to poison their enemies. If you were to get hit with one of these darts, you would die quickly, and the same rule applies to the frogs. The tiny creatures are only 1.5 to 6 centimeters big, which is actually a little bit scarier to me. The thing is that these little guys aren't aggressive in nature. If you're walking and spot one on the path, then you can simply just avoid it and it shouldn't attack you. However, because they are so tiny, it's very easy to accidentally touch one as you trek through the forest. Unlike scorpions or snakes where they need to break the skin, a poison dart frog's toxin just seeps into your skin, and therefore simply touching it is enough to kill you. You may not even know that you've encountered one, because if you do touch it, then you'll be dead in 3 minutes or less. If you are going to the Amazon, make sure you take a guide who knows what they're doing, and maybe wear some gloves to be extra careful of the poison dart frog. Number 3 on this list is the hide behind. The hide behind is a famous cryptid in American folklore that's been talked about for many years. It's a very deadly creature that, if encountered, could very easily take your life. Cryptid Wiki says the hide behind is a mysterious nocturnal creature from American folklore. It's said to prey upon humans that wander the woods at night, and was credited for the disappearances of early colonial loggers when they failed to return to camp. Early accounts describe hide behinds as large, powerful animals, despite the fact that no one was able to see them. As its name suggests, the hide behind is noted for its ability to conceal itself. When an observer attempts to look directly at it, the creature hides again behind an object or the observer, and therefore can't be seen directly. The hide behind uses this ability to stalk human prey without being observed and to attack without warning. Once the person is killed, the hide behind drags the person back to their lair to be eaten. Ever since people have been chopping down trees, this creature has been spoken about as being a menace. It is fast and very predatory, and considering you won't be able to really see it at all if it is stalking you, then having one decide that you're a tasty meal is pretty much a death sentence. That is, unless you happen to be in possession of some alcohol. Beer, wine, whiskey, other hard liquors. If you're a lumberjack who is alone in the woods, then bring some with you. Now, this isn't so that you can get blasted in the forest by yourself, although I'm sure that that would be great fun in its own right. Having some alcohol on your person is actually a defense mechanism. If you feel that one of these creatures is stalking you, then drink the booze that you have. You may even want to take some of it and rub it on your body. This is because it's currently believed that the hide behind hates the smell of alcohol and won't consume anyone or anything that's had it or smells like it. To date, this is our only known way of saving yourself from being prey to this dangerous woodland creature. Number 2 on this list is a Brazilian wandering spider. Similar to our dart frog, this is assuredly a very real animal that scientists have studied extensively. As you can imagine, they are mainly native to Brazil and are extremely dangerous. World Atlas writes, the Brazilian wandering spider is the most venomous arachnid in the world. Even the scientific name of the spider, Phonutria, means murderous in Greek. The spiders are called wandering spiders, as during the night they prefer to crawl on the floor of the jungle looking for prey instead of building webs and staying in them. During the day, the spiders hide in various places, including the banana plant. The spiders might also wander into human settlements where they might remain hidden in houses and cars. If disturbed by humans, they may bite. The small size of these spiders makes them even more difficult to detect. Until 1996, when an antidote had been found, 14 people were reported to have died from the bites of the wandering spider. The venom of the spider causes extreme pain and inflammation, as well as loss of muscle control, which might lead to respiratory paralysis and death. What has this animal higher on the list than the poison dart frog is the fact that it's very aggressive. The dart frog won't leap out at you and try to poison you. It may happen by accident, but it shouldn't want to harm you. This creature does just the opposite though, and it will go for the kill. It's also small enough that you might not notice it, but big enough that if it sees you and starts running towards you, then you might not have time to do anything to stop it. A terrifying animal that you really don't want to come face to face with. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Wendigo. I feel like everybody watching this video knew that this one would be coming, and that just speaks to the level of lore that surrounds this ancient creature. Cryptid Wiki says, the Wendigo is a cannibalistic spirit resembling a zombie. In some forms, the Wendigo is the size of a human, while in others it can be 15 feet tall. The earliest description of the Wendigo was that of a similar appearance to a corpse, with a skeleton-like thin body with gray skin, sunken eyes, bloody lips, yellow fangs, and a long, slimy tongue. Later myths say that the Wendigo is a lipless ape with giant fangs that devours human flesh. It can turn a person into a Wendigo, which was one of the worst curses to the Algonquin-speaking Native Americans of Canada. These beasts are highly dangerous, and encountering one is horribly unlucky. I was looking for some potential ways to fight back against these things, and happened to find an expert list a few on Quora. They say the first is fire. Not just a torch or a bonfire, it needs to be completely engulfed in fire for a prolonged period, long enough to breach the outer Wendigo and reach the human inside. The second requires getting even closer to the murderous beast and somehow stabbing it with something long and sharp directly where the heart should be. Once again, that is where the frozen human is supposedly dormant. Frankly, both of these options are highly dangerous, and even if you did hold up a flame, there's no saying for sure the Wendigo won't simply overpower you as you're doing it. However, these are your best shots at staying alive. Hopefully you never have to do this though, and can avoid an encounter altogether. Number 5 on this list is the Midnight Town. A hiker in the deep woods came upon what looked to be a small gathering or town at midnight where there really shouldn't have been one. Thought Catalog says, I go hiking in the woods that permeate my town, sometimes so late that I get to see the sun rise out there. The strangest thing that I ever saw was what I could only describe as a shanty town that was built up seemingly overnight deep into the woods. Simple little hovels made of scrap metal and bed sheets and a small fire pit that somebody had made out of an old tire with the fire still burning. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The weird part was that this was well past midnight when I found this place, and it was quiet as a grave. There was no one there. Someone made the trouble of getting a fire going and then left it. From the look of it, this place could hold about a dozen or so people, and yet there was nothing there but the fire they abandoned and whatever possessions they had left in the shanties. So this obviously raises a ton of questions, I think. First off, how was this built as quickly as it was? Apparently this guy travels around this area often and he is familiar with it. So obviously he would have seen this shanty town if it was here before. Therefore, how did it get put up so fast? Second question, who put it up and what was the purpose of it? If this was a gathering of homeless people to live, then that might make sense. It wouldn't explain how it got put up here as fast as it did, but it would at least explain the purpose for it being here. Living in Toronto, you see these kind of shanty town things in parks sometimes, and it almost feels as if they just appeared there out of thin air sometimes because they can get put up so fast. So I could buy into that explanation, but then there's the last question. And the one that makes all of this not make any sense. Where are the people now? If this was a town for the homeless, then one would imagine that they would still be there. They aren't there now, so where are they? Could they have stepped away for a little while? Unlikely, considering the fire is still going, and that would have been 12 odd people all going to one place at once, leaving their makeshift home. No. If I was to wager a guess, then what he stumbled onto, was some sort of ritualistic sacrifice thing. They performed their ceremony and then they left. Or maybe they got transported to another realm or something like that, and that's why they aren't there now. None of the more realistic explanations make any sense, so I would wager that it's something like that. Number 4 on this list is the figure. I think moral of this video, if you could take away one thing, is to not go hiking at nighttime. One hiker learned his lesson in this next story. Thought Catalog says, I drove to a park to go hiking at night in the mountains. So safe, I know. And I hadn't even turned off my car and I already felt like I was being watched. There weren't any cars around, so I thought maybe it was just me being paranoid for some reason. But for some reason, I look to my right and I see this weird looking humanoid shape on top of the little bump hill about 50 feet away. At first, I thought it was a weirdly shaped tree until I saw the arms move. No wind at all. So now I know there's a person staring at my car, trying not to move for what I assume is for me to get out of my car and leave to a more secluded area, as we were next to the road. Now in this story, our hiker doesn't get attacked or chased away, just stalked. But the reason I included it in this video is because this reminds me a lot of a creature that we've talked about extensively on this channel before. The Skinwalker. They like to chill around forest and mountainy areas. They like to stalk their prey, and it feels as if they almost take pleasure in having people fear them. I think that's what this guy almost ran into. I think that had he gotten out of that car, that literally would have been the last thing he did. He didn't get out of his vehicle and decided to drive away after realizing he was in danger. But thank goodness his spidey senses were tingling and he noticed that figure, or else that could have been it. Number 3 on this list is the werewolf. Now, I don't know if this next story is of a werewolf or not, so I need you guys to be the judges and comment down below what you think it is. Thought Catalog says, I was in Syria on a visit from Australia back in the late 90s. I saw 2 dogs in the distance about 30 meters away, lit up by a bright moon. They had faces that looked human. I seriously froze. They walked up to about 10 meters away and looked totally flippin' human. One of them growled, so I fired off a round and they ran away. I immediately headed back home looking over my shoulder the entire way. I told my aunt what I saw and the house erupted in laughter. It was some local ghost story. Everyone had an encounter with them at one stage or another. Now, it's possible that these things could have been skinwalkers as well as that previous encounter, but for some reason I'm thinking werewolf. Like, our guy here seems to really be sticking to the fact that it was a dog-like thing. If I saw a werewolf, then that would probably be a sticking point for me as well. It's also funny though that this was a local ghost story, keyword being ghost. Werewolves and skinwalkers wouldn't be classified as ghosts, they would be creatures. So whatever these things are, werewolf, skinwalker, or other, it's definitely weird. Let me know in the comments if you guys know what this thing could have been. Number 2 on this list is the light. A lot of times, ghosts and spiritual entities like to appear as orbs of light. In this next story, I think that's what happens. Thought Catalog says, hiking in central Maine near the 100-mile wilderness section of the AT, about as thinly populated as you can get in the lower 48. Wife and I pull up to the trailhead at about 2 a.m. after a long drive and epic storms and decide to catch a few Z's before hitting the trail at sunrise. After settling in, we notice a blinking light on a distant mountain. There's no illumination for miles and miles in any direction, so it sticks out immediately and we comment on it likely being the only radio tower for 50 miles. Then Then the light starts slowly moving down the hill. It's maybe a couple miles off and we both get interested. We figure it must be some truly insane coming down the mountain in the darkest part of night with a headlamp. And the blinking is when a tree obscures line of sight. It keeps coming and picks up speed, and at this point we start to make casual jokes that it's coming right towards us. I can't remember how long we had the car's lights off, but at this point we turn them back on as we're starting to feel a little creepy. We watch the light come down the hill, covering the couple miles in a minute, maybe two. Then it's right outside, about 20 feet off the ground and blinking. We grab a flashlight to try to see what it is, but can see nothing. It's just a blinking light about the brightness of a dim street light appearing every few seconds. It hovers there for around 20 minutes, then was suddenly gone. Now I can't say for sure, but I bet that light was a spirit, and that spirit was trying to warn these people about something. Maybe that hill or mountain they were near, maybe something's not quite right about that place, and this spirit was telling them to stay away. Either that, or it was getting angry at them for being there. Whatever way you spin it though, I think our friends needed to get out of there. And number one on this list is the body. The woods being a secluded area with no one around make them the perfect spot for hiking and getting away. They're also the perfect spot for hiding a body. Well, that's what hiker Anderson found out in the woods of British Columbia. He was hiking around in a very remote section of the woods, somewhere he would have imagined not a ton of people would go, and something caught the corner of his eye. It was a shiny glimmer, and he went towards it. His focus fixed onto it, and what he was looking at was a human finger with a ring on it, and the ring was glimmering in the sun. He called the police immediately, and sure enough, there was a human corpse right there. At first, he was hoping that this was just an accidental death and that the person had maybe slipped while hiking or something. But that wasn't the case. Foul play was definitely involved after the coroner had a look at it, which means that Anderson found the body of a murder victim, which then also means that the area he was hiking in, for all he knows, could have been the hunting grounds for this killer. Obviously, that tainted the entire area for him, and he never went hiking in that spot again.